Hello Internet! We are well on our way for WITMonth, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and a tiny bit about general diversity movements, so this will be fun. Number one, WITMonth is on its way. It is very, very exciting. It is so wonderful to see so many people getting involved this year. I am just actually overwhelmed by the amount of posts and tweets and people discussing and sharing and publishers getting involved and reviewers and whatever you can possibly imagine. It is quite literally too much for me to be able to sift through at the end of the day the way I did last year, where I didn't even do it at the end of the day. I would, at the end of the week, kind of sum up everything, and it's like, oh, this is a lot. Now at the end of the day, I have trouble keeping track of things, so that is just incredible. That is all thanks to you and every single person who is participating in Women in Translation Month in some form or other, so thank you, and keep it up. We have several more weeks to go. And I wanted to talk a bit about general diversity movements. There are a lot in the literary world. There's this kind of gradual understanding that you can't just have literature that represents only a very, very small subset of the world's population. And so instead of just having, white New York men writing books, you have a lot of movements, the Read Women movement, Translation Thursday, you have Diversify Young Adult, you have We Need Diverse Books, tons and tons and tons of movements, all of them pretty much separate from each other, which seek to do the same thing, and that's to create a more diverse literary culture. And now, I am for every single one of these movements. I think that there is so clearly a need for diversity, particularly in things like children's literature and young adult literature, and sort of not just, but definitely for kids, it's very, very important to be able to see the entire world and the entire spectrum of humanity when you're kind of learning to empathize with other humans and live inside their heads through fiction. The fact that these movements don't really incorporate each other is a problem, I think. You basically have today a separation between every single one of these things, and so you'll have people who take on challenges of okay, this month I'm going to read writers of color, this month I'm going to read, translated literature, this month I'm going to read books by women writers, instead of recognizing that this is all the same concept and the same spectrum, and we need to be integrating between these. And one of the reasons I feel okay saying this during my own highly specific kind of diversity month is because I think that Women in Translation encompasses a lot of these different movements. And so when I see something like the We Need Diverse Books movement talking only about Anglo writers, I feel like it is entirely missing the fact that there is a need also for literature and translation and world literature for kids. And when I see kind of the Read Women movement, which doesn't include any discussion of race or explicit discussion, I should mention, the movement does incorporate within it to a certain degree kind of everything. But it isn't explicit in terms of race or language or origin or sexuality and things like that, and it feels like a bit of a missed opportunity. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do with Women in Translation Month is also to encourage very, very strongly, it's not just about reading women writers from other languages, it's about reading women writers from all over the world. Not just Europe, and not just, white women, and not just privileged women, and not just straight women. We're talking, yes, about women in particular because there is this huge imbalance, but there are further levels that we have to be talking about and we have to take into account. And so that's why there is the Queer Literature Challenge. That's why there's the Classics Challenge, which is another field where women are constantly shut out despite the fact that they shouldn't be. That's why I really encourage people to read, children's fiction and young adult fiction, which is practically never translated. I really encourage people to read sci-fi by women writers in translation. Okay, have every level of diversity. And for the people coming from the other movements, things like we need diverse books, read women, diversify YA, whatever other diversity movement it may be, take into account language, take into account origin. I constantly see lists of sort of that encourage reading books by women of color, and then there's not a single translation on that list, despite the fact that most of the world is not white, and in translation you can get that. And it's just being ignored because it's not on people's sort of main, conceptual, assumption. That's not the right word. Most people don't think about it, is what I'm trying to say, and I think that we should. I think that these movements need to be working together a lot more than they currently are. If anyone from other movements wants to chat, let's make it happen. So yeah, in the meantime, just keep it up. It's really, really awesome to see everyone participating and, reading so many books and really doing an amazing job in terms of diversity. So wonderful to see the improvement from last year. And the only place to go from here is up. Let's just keep going.